This is chapter 27. After the show, Jasper, Mr. Schmidt, and Mike met just outside the big tent to have a smoke and discuss the performances. Jasper lit a cigarette, kicked at the dirt, and then said to Mr. Schmidt, "I think Sheila's getting too old. She's favoring her left side slightly. She's not jumping with as much confidence, and Roscoe won't tell you, but she's maybe just a little less patient too. I think it's time we look for a zoo that'll take her before something happens and she or someone else gets hurt." "Noted," said Mr. Schmidt. Letting go of a lion is a tricky business. You can't just set them free, of course, and you can't just drop them off at the nearest zoo. There are large expenses involved with taking on a lion, and most zoos already have their fill of big cats. Getting a new lion to replace Sheila would also be a huge undertaking, one that Mr. Schmidt wasn't looking forward to funding. "How long do you think we can stretch her, Jasper?" asked Mr. Schmidt. "At this point, if we only use her every other show, she should be fine for a while, maybe 6 months. But we're going to have to pay close attention and yank her the minute she starts showing tendencies." Mike thought this was as good a time as any to show that he was good for something besides having the book learning. "I heard there's a regional circus out west that's expecting their senior cat to go any day. They might want to take on Sheila as a looky lion. A looky lion's sole job is to sit near the entrance to the circus and roar to attract as much attention as possible to the circus." "Get in touch," said Mr. Schmidt. "Maybe we can meet up with them in Salt Lake in the fall." "Will do," said Mike. Just then, Renee appeared from the big tent. "What's up, little bro?" she said to Mike, wrapping her arm over his shoulder. Mike hadn't much time to catch up with Renee since his return, and he had been staying somewhat distant from her for this very reason. She made it more difficult for him to be taken seriously, just like Princess with her hand on his lap. Renee called him Lil Bro in front of the boss didn't exactly convey the image of a serious and capable adult that Mike wanted to convey to the rest of the cast and crew. "Hey Renee," he said, "good show today." Jasper and Mr. Schmidt both gave their congratulations, and Renee hugged them both and did an elaborate bow as she sidestepped away. Like every man in the circus, Jasper and Mr. Schmidt couldn't take their eyes off Renee, and they both wore goofy smiles on their faces for a moment after she left. "Right, so where were we?" asked Jasper. Said Mr. Schmidt, adjusting his belt and leaning back on his heels. "Sorry, chap," said Jasper. "I know she's your sister and all, but she does have a way of making a man feel like his life is worth living." "Wouldn't know," said Mike. "Well, I'm going to retire in my trailer for a sip or two before the evening show," said Mr. Schmidt. "Care to join?" "I'd love to," said Mike, "but I think I'm going to go get right on this Sheila situation." Jasper, knowing that a sip or two would end up with him too plastered to do the 7 o'clock show, excused himself as well. "I'll take a rain check on that one, hoss. These ropes won't check themselves." Jasper was certain that every rope in the house was in perfect shape, but he kept the rose in his pocket as a go-to excuse for whenever he needed a rest or had a secret rendezvous with a lady clown. And if his reading of clowns was right, he was about to have such a rendezvous with Renee. Mike excused himself from the group and walked to the perimeter of the tent. The last remaining customers were exiting, and the kids of all ages were pretending to be fierce lions or were reenacting their favorite clown bits from the show. Mike pondered his ideas about how to make the circus be profitable again. His first task was to be respected, and that would never happen until he could prove himself. But first, he'd need to get some things straight with Renee. After another lap around the tent and another smoke, he headed for Renee's makeup trailer. The door was ajar, so he stepped up and entered. Inside, Mike saw Renee with her checkered clown pants around her ankles, leaning over the makeup counter, her wig and makeup half off, and Jasper taking her from behind. Both saw Mike come in. Jasper smiled and winked at Mike. Renee buried her face in her hands. "Oh shit," said Mike, "I'm sorry." He left the trailer as quickly as he could, shutting the door fully behind himself. Mike had suffered one too many indignities today. Too many situations set him back too many times. He wanted to be in charge, to do his job, to stand up and be a man, but the world seemed to be against him. Not knowing what to do or where to hide from further embarrassment, he went to the dwarf trailer. The dwarf trailer was the same size as the other trailers, standard boxcar size, and from the outside it looked much the same as all the other cars in the Great Western Circus of America's train. It slept twice as many people, though. Inside, it was subdivided into 6 rooms, rather than the normal 3. Princess had the first room in the front of the trailer. Mike pulled himself up into the trailer and knocked on Princess's door, even though it was partially open. Princess yelled for him to come in. Inside, all 6 midgets were talking and drinking beers. They cheered when Mike entered. "Hip hip hooray for Mike, the tallest little person," yelled Leo. They all joined in cheering and toasting Mike. "Hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray." "Thanks everyone," said Mike. "It's good to be back home." Little Rocky, the strongest midget, brought Mike a beer, opened it with his teeth, and Mike squatted down to take it and to pat Rocky on the back. The furniture in the midget room was all 2/3 size, which made it spacious for the midgets, who were mostly about half size. But for Mike, who was just about normal man size at 5'9" it could be quite uncomfortable. Mike sat down on the edge of Princess's bed. Princess climbed up onto the bed and stood next to him, her hand on his shoulder. "You know, you'll always be one of the little people family to us, Mikey," she said, kissing him on the cheek. "We're so proud of you." Mike was relieved that she had forgotten or forgiven his brush off on the bus earlier in the day. The other midgets gathered around Mike and Princess, forming a semicircle so they could all hear and see. Lil Lizzie spoke next. "First little person to graduate from college!" They all laughed, and Mike laughed with them. Charlie the midget, or Drunk Chuck, as he was known, pulled another beer out of Princess's cooler, opened it, and took a gulp, and then asked Mike, "So, now that you're in charge, can we do something about the unequal pay? I hate to be a downer, but just because we're little shouldn't mean our paychecks are little." "Chuck, I don't think this is the time, and I don't think Mike is the person to address this," said Princess. Mike sat up straighter, which had the effect of pushing Princess's hand off his shoulder. "No, I think I can address this, Chuck," he said. "As you well know, pay scales are based on circus rules. Circus rules, as you know, are based on the way we've always done it. We've always done it that way because it's worked for us in the past. The fact is, it's easier and has always been easier to get little people who are willing to work cheap. The circus has to save money where it can, and that's one place where we do. These days, I don't think anyone would say it's right, the same as we now know it's not right to pay women or others less just because of their sex, color, or where they were born. But the circus rules are tough to change. It's a complex system of balances and counterbalances that keep the wheels moving and ensures that there's always the next show. If we raise pay here, we need to cut expenses there. If midget pay, which is 2/3 clown pay, goes up, then do we need to raise clown pay to be equal to animal handler pay? Do we need to raise ticket prices to pay for it? Do we need to spend less on travel? Or can we get by with fewer people? For the most part, the circus laws protect us from these decisions by providing strict guidelines that we all agree on because that's the way it's always been. But how do we adapt the circus rules to changing times? That's my job, and I want to do it right for you, for the circus, for the customers, and for the future of the traveling circus and the traveling circus lifestyle that we all love." Mike took a sip of his beer. He was proud of his first real speech as the business guy at the circus, and it seemed to him that the midgets were impressed and satisfied with it as well. "Well, we certainly do wish you the best, Mikey," said Leo. "I don't envy you the job you gotta do. You know, we've always got your back." "Or your balls, more like," said Charlie, reaching up and pretending to squeeze something in the air at about the height of a normal man's midsection. The other midgets laughed, and Rocky almost knocked over a vase of flowers when he fell laughing. "Well, let's give these two some time," said Leo, moving towards the door. "Yep, see you around, Mikey," said Charlie. They all left except for Princess, who stood next to Mike and put her head on his shoulder.